members of the board, thank you for having me here tonight. For those of you in the audience who do not know me, my name is George Villar. I'm the principal of Warren Middle School. Thank you, America Silver. Yes, right? So tonight it's my pleasure to speak to you about the update of our master schedule, give you the background on where we began with this process, how far we've come, and what we're looking for moving into the future with regards to the changes that we've made at the middle school. Just a little background for you. Let me pontificate here for a minute about the idea of master schedule. It can sound like a really dull topic. It's actually something that I love in my job. It's something I actually look forward to working on the master schedule. Because it's one of the sort of building block things that literally touches every element of what happens during the school day. And another thing that the master schedule does is it creates the culture and the climate of the school building. Right? It sets the routines. You think about the patterns that it's just been building, the people you get to see on a daily basis, how you go about your business, who do you share your lunchtime with, when do you get to have your breaks with, right? When do you get to use the bathroom, right? The arrangement of your classes. This is all master schedule. So it literally creates life as we know it between, for us at the middle school, between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and how those patterns are going to work. This is something that you have to take very seriously, right? Because it literally establishes all sorts of relationships within the building, and it shows the value that you have. It shows what you want your students to experience and your teachers to be able to have available to them as resources over the course of a school day. So it's something that we have to be very mindful of as we go about either establishing a new one or making changes to an old one. Okay. All right, so tonight through this presentation, first I want to give the board members the timeline, especially those members who weren't here several years ago when staff in the middle school began having this conversation about what should we do with the master schedule, to explain what the objective was last year when I came before the board with Mr. Octow, our then vice principal, and laid out our plan for the next 2 years. The 4 goals that we established within this master schedule change, some of the things we found out in the time that we have so far put the schedule into place, and then how we move forward from there. What is our plan on an organization looking forward to next year from the data that we've learned this year. And then just overall things we've learned, and then if you have any questions, to avail myself to you for those. All right, so the conversation about the Warren Middle School Master Schedule actually started back in 2014. Members of the school community, the staff came together and started to identify some areas of need. One of the real catalysts for that was the PARCC exam had been introduced to the middle school, right, as a measure of student assessment. It had very different kinds of demands than the old NJ Ask and required a different kind of learning that was taking place. So many of the content area teachers were articulating this concern, was the 46-minute period every day long enough to fit in all those requirements? Right, all the new types of methods, instructional methods that needed to take place in the classroom. Could it happen with that? Or could we have a schedule that had a little bit longer, especially in terms of English, mathematics, to allow for some of that learning to take place? And once that conversation started, naturally other people begin to ask questions like, well, what about pull-out programs? Oftentimes we're losing students out of classroom for band, orchestra, and chorus. Is there a way to address some of those needs as well? Okay. So it came out of a very natural place to start asking these questions to say what could happen. So that committee took the time to meet with the entire school constituency and poll them and gather their data, so that by 2016-2017 school year, they were ready to put phase 1 of the schedule in place. And the decision was made that the 6th grade would be the pilot year. They would actually start with the new form or the new arrangement of the schedule. So last year, 6th grade alone went to the pilot year, and we used them as our resource to make some projections for this year. Last February, Mr. Octow and I came before the Board of Ed and shared with you that the plan was over the next 2 years to roll out full schedule to everybody in the building. We had seen success in the 6th grade. We made some modifications. There were some decisions that had to be made, which I'll show you later on in the template of how the schedule rolled out, that make it what's happening in 7th and 8th grade a little bit different than what happened in 6th grade. So this is the old schedule. So prior to 2016, this is the way the Warren Middle School schedule worked. It was an 8-period day, what we call a static day. Everything was 46 minutes, with 3 minutes of passing in between each class. Within the 6th grade and 7th grade, you have 5 core subjects that students rotated through. In the 6th grade, they were English language arts, math, reading, science, social studies. You'll notice over on the 7th and 8th grade side, no reading, but world language becomes one of the mix of 5, right? So a little bit of a change took place there. In 6th grade, your world language and your physical education alternated days, A day, B day, so that every 6th grade student received half a year of world language, half a year of physical education, in a way of thinking, right? A day, B day alternating. There were 7 cycle classes of about 25 days apiece, and the band, orchestra, and chorus were part of the cycles. 7 cycles, so cycles 2 and 3, you were in band, orchestra, chorus, and then again in cycles 4 and 5. The idea being get ready for the winter concert and get ready for the spring concert. That's how that worked. And when you weren't in the regular cycle, you got pulled out of classes for your regular lessons. For the 7th and 8th grade students, as I've already said, they took world language as part of their daily course. They had a full year of physical education. They also had the cycle classes the same way the 6th grade did, band, orchestra, chorus, part of those cycles. All right, so what we laid out last year was this idea that we would recreate our bell schedule, and we would stagger minutes of classes. No longer would it all be 46 minutes even. The larger minutes going, some longer classes of 52 minutes going to the content areas, 42-minute classes for what we call the unified arts area. That would be physical education, all of our cycles, and our world language. We made some adjustments to our curricular programs, and then we reorganized the staff based on that model. We had come away with 4 basic goals to the master schedule. The first was the instructional goal. How do we find more minutes for those core classes? Right? And make sure that this is where we're giving people time to actually introduce those new strategies within the content areas that they wanted to. Second was to find a way to improve the pull-out experience within band, orchestra, and chorus. Right? So make sure that students didn't feel like they were having to make a sacrifice by being involved in those programs. To find common planning time for staff, which is something that had long been a complaint of the faculty, because oftentimes someone would teach both 6th and 7th grade, or 6th and 8th grade. So it meant they had different times of the day they were with students, and they were not with students. They never found time to get together to plan collectively as a grade level. And lastly, one of the things we saw possible as we were redoing the schedule is to introduce the team concept to the middle school. This is something I'm very familiar with in my experience, and I feel is very valuable to the middle school life and culture. That you take sets of students within a grade level, and you create small subsets of them, right? An A team, a B team, and you can call them whatever color, whatever name you want. You go with the school colors of blue and white, but I've seen other kinds of labeling like that. The idea is you create these small learning communities within the larger community, and then students have a shared experience over the course of the day. All right, so to inform us about our progress so far, we put a staff survey out, we put a survey out to students, we put a survey out to parents, asking each of them for their feedback on the 4 goals. It's just saying, how did we do, right? How are things going so far? And then an open-ended kind of statement at the end of that survey to tell us anything you wanted, right? If there's something that we're not representing here in the survey, just share what's on your mind with us. But also making regular use of team meetings, talking to the grade level team leaders, and then at our administrative meetings, examining what was happening, what do we see taking place, how do we see courses progressing, so to gather all the data that we needed to assess how we were doing. So in goal number 1, this was the instructional minute goal. What you see here is some of the things I've listed are the kinds of things that teachers have said that they can now do in a classroom because they have the additional 6 minutes they didn't have previously under the 46-minute schedule. They now have 52 minutes of class. It gives them more time either at the beginning or the end as they kind of see it, to introduce one-to-one instruction, have mini lessons, to really have extensive group discussions, or to begin to review homework. That last one is actually one that would be very important. Oftentimes a teacher can say, why don't you go ahead and start what will be your homework assignment? And as students are working through it, if they encounter difficulties, there's an opportunity, right, for a teacher to address some of that before the student goes home and realizes they don't quite understand something, right? So they actually can make corrections, help a student, so when they go home, they're successful with the homework. They don't find it so frustrating. All right, so just to give you some background on the numbers that we're talking about here. We have 120 staff members at Warren Middle School, and that's total, that's everybody. That's instructional staff, paraprofessionals, secretaries, custodians, counselors, the whole 9 yards. We made the survey available to every one of them. The thought was, if the schedule has an impact on the entire school day, let's ask everyone who is affected by it for their feedback. So of the 120 staff members, I had 76 respondents, 76 staff members weighed in on this. We gave them a scale, so we asked them a basic question. The current schedule addresses the needs of instructional time. 1 being strongly disagree, a 5 on the scale was a strongly agree. So we see the majority of our staff, of the respondents, saying 4 and 5, either agree or strongly agree. 18 is kind of a neutral, right? I guess you could add that one either way. And then a minority of those who responded saying 1 or 2. So it's interesting as we drill down into this and we look at and examine who were the respondents. The people who were saying no, that they don't agree with the increased instructional time, were three categories. They were sixth grade reading teachers, language arts teachers, because the sixth grade used to have both an ELA class and a reading class. So even though they were getting an additional 52 minutes of ELA time, they feel like they lost a whole other reading period that was attached to that. So they were saying no, right? We lost a little bit here. There were world language teachers who used to have 46 minutes in 7th and 8th grade for world language. Now they're working with 42 minutes. And they were special education teachers who have in an off period time with the kids. Some of that was abbreviated or shortened. So they're saying no, like we see that core people, right? ELA, math, science, social studies, they're getting the majority of the minutes. So that's who those 20 people are that are over there to the right-hand side of that. Interestingly, here's how students weighed in on that same topic. So we have 628 students at Warren Middle School. I had 122 of them respond to the survey. So of that 122, 49 agree, 43 strongly agree that they're finding that they're benefiting from the increased instructional minutes in their core classes. And interestingly, parents pretty much say the same thing. Now the parents is kind of I wish I could give you a hard number on how many parents we have. I can't give you a sort of a hard count, but if you more or less take, right, 628 multiplied by 2, give or take, right, you're gonna have a general idea. But I had 63 parents respond to the survey. So a very small sampling of the parent population responding, although I think you're gonna see there's some really interesting stuff here in terms of how parents parallel what the students are saying. Really strong connection there. So overall, it seems that both students and parents are pleased with the additional minutes they're having in their core classes. All right, so goal 2 was regard to how we pull students out of classes for band, orchestra, or chorus. And I think this chart sums up very well a trend that has taken place since we have made this change to how students experience either band, orchestra, or chorus. All right? So if you look at the chart, right, we have by grade level going across the left side, and then the number of students actually enrolled going through the chart. You see that in 8th grade, only 39% of our 8th grade students currently participate in band, orchestra, or chorus. Compare that to 77% of our 6th graders participating in that program. And it wasn't that when these 8th graders were in 6th grade, they were much, much higher. It was a little bit higher, and it's come down since then. But what we're seeing is that since we've created this new kind of experience for students, where instead of having to pull out of some of their core classes, they are either coming during physical education, they have an AB day with band, orchestra, chorus, or physical education. It compels them to be involved in this program. It's a good thing for them. They want to do it. One thing we would anticipate as those, right, that 189 students move to their 7th grade year next year, I anticipate that the number will go down a little bit. Right? But we do have some attrition that will take place. But I think this really speaks to this idea that, right, when you build the kind of structure that doesn't put students at odds, right, doesn't make it hard for them to be involved in the program, they're going to be involved. All right, goal number 3 was about common planning time for teachers, and overwhelmingly this came back a positive from staff. Even those, right, so whether you were on a grade level or you're part of the Unified Arts team, again, a 1 being strongly disagree, a 5 being strongly agree. We have the staff saying, yes, this is a good thing. We have now this common planning time. We have a team period, we have a prep period, we have a curriculum period during the day. So they're given the space they need to speak collectively or to spend time thinking about how they instruct students within the classroom. I did not ask students and parents about common planning time because they have no experience with it, right? So they would not have weighed in on that one. And then goal 4. This one's fascinating, right? And you're going to see by what the data says here. The idea, again, within the team, as I explained earlier, you take half of the 6th grade, you put them on one team, the other half on the other team within the grade level to create these smaller learning experiences. And they share the same English, math, science, and social studies teacher. So during the course of the day, they see the same set of 4 teachers, or they'll have the same set of 4 teachers. So when those teachers get together during their team time, they all have the same students. So when they want to talk about a student, everybody in the room has had that collection of students. So they sort of have this group investment in terms of the kids that they're talking about. And then as a team, they're able to talk with each other and say, hey, when are you giving that math test? When are you giving that English test? Let's make sure we coordinate so we're not overburdening the kids, right? We're being mindful of how, of what their responsibilities are, and let's help them, through that. Here is, I gave a number of statements to students to ask them about their team experience. And so this was a series of check boxes, and they could check any number of of these statements that they wanted, including none of the above or all of the above. So of our 122 students, 64 of them said that the thing they liked most about team is that number one statement. It's helpful to everyone I am in class with, has same teachers. In other words, what students are saying to us, what they value most about the school day, what they found, what they value about the team experience, is that there's a common shared experience with their friends. They're either in classes with their friends, or they know that their friends are having the same kind of teachers that they're having a shared experience going on here with them, right? It's a social, right, value, as opposed to, let's say, I'm not saying they're devaluing the academic, but they're saying that within the team model, they find that this takes place, and they like this. This is a good thing.
That's a good question.
Yes.
Should we wait?
We wait
It is-
till the end, yeah,
okay.
and then we'll just,
Okay.
We'll
sure we'll have the opportunity.
I can go back to slide two again if you like, okay, if that's helpful. And then you see some of the other characteristics that students said were helpful to them being on a team. Here's how parents weighed in with the same set of criteria. They're saying the exact same thing, I mean, at least say their number one response, the thing they like most about teams, is that they know that their children's, their right, sons and daughters' friends are having the same experience that their child is having during the school day. All right, so what we have now this year, over the 3 grade levels, is this schedule plan. This is what we're taking forward again next year. It's 4 core classes of 52 minutes. That's ELA, math, science, and social studies. It's the 3 encore periods of world language, physical education, and cycle. There are 5 cycles now, not 7. We actually reduced the number of cycles because we know that we were reducing the number of their minutes, so we give them more days for students to be in cycle class. Right, it went from 29-day cycles to 36-day cycles. You actually have more time with students, right, when you're there. Grade 8 has an elected choice. They actually have a number of courses, and they get to pick some of those that they're going to be in for now. And in grade 7 and 8, you have the choice of PE or PE band orchestra chorus. Right? If you choose to be in band orchestra chorus, it's on an 8-day rotation with physical education. If you don't choose to be in band orchestra chorus, you get physical education every day, right, within your schedule. This year currently, because of the enrollment, especially that in the 8th grade class, we had 2 6th grade teams, 2 7th grade teams. Because of the big enrollment in 8th, we had 3 8th grade teams. Next year, the plan is to go 2 2 2. Right, so blue and white throughout the building. And then here's the daily bell schedule we're proposing for next year. This is a little bit of a change. You'll see during that period 2 for 7th and 8th grade, there's a PE band orchestra chorus for cycle, and then in 8th grade there's a PE band orchestra chorus for world language. Right? So basically what that's saying is if you're a 7th grader and you choose to be in band orchestra chorus, this is where you have PE band orchestra chorus movement. If you haven't chosen to do that, this is where you have your cycle classes. And then in 8th grade, that same idea with world language. This year currently, that experience happens during period 1. And I want to thank Ms. Spencer here, my vice principal, who was really determined to, it was her idea to say, you know, I think it's valuable that every student start the day in a core class. Because then we introduced this idea of a homeroom to the grade level this year. Homeroom and the first core period can be tied together. We can take attendance in a timely fashion. And just start the kids off by kind of, it anchors the day, and then they go on to the rest of their experiences. So she was really instrumental in making sure that this change in schedule happened. And then you see for each grade level a different kind of experience happening there, you know, throughout the day. Move out of the way. Are you under orders?
My child doesn't know.
All right, so interestingly, just the things that we've learned as we've gone through the master schedule experience. Because of the size, teachers have expressed a concern about size of classes. Right, there are places where we have some large classes for Warren taking place. I don't want to say that they're large classes, right? But in terms of your experience, if you're used to a certain size of class and suddenly you have more students than that, that's a change, right? Again, it's one of those things that a schedule can do. So one of the things we look forward to next year is how to address some of those, you know, larger classes and make sure that things are staying reasonable in size for what we are accustomed to here. Definitely one of the takeaways is with regards to students and with regard to parents, just as much importance on socialization as on the academics. They're saying it's not just what we learn during the day, but how we go about learning it and who we learn it with, right? How we're socializing and making friends as we go. When you read the comments in the student section and in the parent section, is why I have perception there, right? People linked, often this year, the experience, students are finding that if they're in English class with a certain group of kids, they're seeing that same group of kids again in social studies, in science, in mathematics, and attributing that to the fact that they're on a team, and saying the team has created this experience for me. It's actually not. That's just a function of the schedule, but it tells us that as we work on the math schedule for the coming year, we need to make sure that we randomize that situation. So you don't see the same students 3 more times in the day as you saw in the first period. That you have a range of experiences. I mean, that's really the goal of the team, is that you would see everybody on your team, you know, over the course of the day, and make for a different kind of situation like that. Staff certainly expressed a concern in the schedule because there's 52-minute and 42-minute combinations in the day. Different grade levels are passing at different times throughout the whole day. Whereas under the old schedule, when it was static, all teachers could stand outside their door and all the students went to class and then everybody was in class. Right, so you have different things happening like that. One way that we will have to resolve that is with our reducing enrollment, we're going to consolidate some classrooms to make sure that there's a distinct 6th grade portion of the building, 7th grade portion of the building, and an 8th grade portion of the building. So if the students are passing, they're not interrupting the other grade levels. We won't see them in their hallways. Or we'll minimize how often they are in each other's hallways. Just some feedback about instructional minutes, and then staff love the homeroom. But they just, right now, it's a very short homeroom we have during the school day. It happens only for 4 minutes at the beginning of the day. Next year, we're planning a longer homeroom period to make sure that it functions better. And right now, all we do with homeroom is take attendance. Next year, the goal is attendance and announcements will happen in the homeroom period. And then you can start the instruction of period 1 and move on from there.